an educator, born and raised in DC, and All Eyes on DC is part of an effort pretty much to provide a platform for people in our global community who are doing the things that we need to be self-determined as Black African people. Because self-determination is the ultimate goal as far as I see it. Not entirely unity, but self-determination, in the sense that once you're confident about who you are, you have that knowledge of self, and you understand that you can depend on nobody else but yourself for your freedom, you'll connect with like-minded people. So unity comes with self-determination, because we all need to be networked with like-minded people, people who understand who we are as Black African people, and people who want to free us in every facet of the sense, in every facet. So with that being said, our guest tonight is none other than Sinclair Skinner. Sinclair Skinner, for those of y'all who don't know, is a maven within the Bitcoin industry, the cryptocurrency industry. In September, if you were around the Howard University campus, there was what was called a Bitcoin conference. It was pretty much a gathering of the minds of people from all parts of the African diaspora, but more specifically, some parts of the United States, and I would even say Zimbabwe, some parts of Zimbabwe.
Uganda, Kenya, Puerto Rico, all over.
See, there you have it, right? So this is pretty international, and what Mr. Skinner and his partner have done is pretty much use Bitcoin as a means of breaking out of the current financial system in order to free our people even more. But I'm just talking surface level with that. So with tonight's interview, hopefully we can get deeper into that by first learning more about cryptocurrency, what it represents, and entirely how you use that in order to break out of the system to free our people economically. So let's give Mr. Sinclair Skinner a warm round of applause, y'all, please. I'm gonna go hard with that. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's very hard tracking this brother down, and for good reason. He's always out and about, always doing the work. I'm gonna read a little bit about him. African-American engineer, human rights activist, political advisor, serial entrepreneur, and former elected official in DC. He's also a Bitcoin and blockchain technology evangelist and an advocate of the advancement of African communities in relation to the diaspora. Mr. Skinner holds a BS degree in mechanical engineering from Howard University and is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. He was first elected to public office in 1998 as an ANC commissioner right here in Ward 1. Currently, he is co-founder and CEO of the Pan-African Bitcoin startup known as Bitmari. And before we let him talk, I'm also going to read a little bit about Bitmari. And if there's anything else that you can add about Bitmari during our conversation, please do. Bitmari is a payment platform that significantly lowers the cost and increases the speed of remittance payments throughout the African diaspora using Bitcoin. Founded by Sinclair Skinner and Christopher Mompandera in 2015, Bitmari is the only Bitcoin startup to receive an international license to use Bitcoin for remittances from a central bank. Wow. It was launched again in 2015 from the Zimbabwe headquarters and office operations in DC. The next year, the company entered its beta phase and expanded beyond the African continent into the US, Japan, Canada, Switzerland, the Dominican Republic, and China. So that's quite a mouthful there. So I guess to start us off, Mr. Skinner, the question that's on my mind, and the question that I'm pretty sure is on everybody else's mind tonight is, what exactly is Bitcoin, what's cryptocurrency, and what's blockchain, right? These words often get thrown around a lot in the conversation, and people who aren't too technologically inept, they're not going to quite grasp onto it just yet. So if you can just explain it as best as you can for us.
First of all, thank you so much for having me this evening. So I just want to say this is on a Friday night, talking about Bitcoin with my people is awesome. It's Friday night. I'm thinking about all the Friday nights in my life I've spent. It's probably very few I spent going out on a Bitcoin day. So I think y'all are like exceptional folks, full stop. Like y'all are like beyond like anybody in the world right now y'all are right here talking about some Bitcoin on a Friday night. Y'all are amazing. So God bless y'all. My ancestors, I know, are definitely proud. Bitcoin is a technology. So what I try to do with this, I think it's probably two phases. So I first got into Bitcoin in like 2013 and was very interested in using this tool to solve some problems in our community. And then in trying to get black folks involved in this technology. And then 2017, finally black folks got involved, but everybody was like doing BitConnect and like multi-level marketing schemes and like all kind of like pimp games. It was like, wait a minute, like I wanted all of us to be in it to liberate ourselves, but then we just brought the plantation with us. Like it was kind of crazy. Like we brought the same contextual, someone else controlling our, and we getting this trickle down economics. And so some of my conversation is gonna be a little, I'm not gonna say bifurcated, but I want to speak to what Bitcoin is and why I think it's relevant for us, and also in general what it is, so we can say it's a technology. As a technology, Bitcoin is, basically blockchain technology. So it's the most successful application of blockchain technology. And this is actually a blocks of data chained together. So with me, I try to also make it so it's not spooky. Don't make it like crazy sounding. Look, it's literally encrypted data that's chained together in sequence. So here's one block, the very first block that was ever created. The first group of data that was encrypted is called the Genesis block. It's the first one. Then after that block was formed, then another block, and then another block. And then to try to get to that first Genesis block, you got to undo all these other blocks. So that's why people start talking about it's hard to change the blockchain. They call it indelible. Once you have this block set, to actually undo or change that information, you got to change all these other blocks. And since Bitcoin's inception, by a guy named Satoshi, which is not even, could be a woman, could be anyone, because it's actually a pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto. So some people think that it's an Asian person, and I tell people, Dr. Seuss wasn't a doctor. It was just a pseudonym. So to think that a person would give a fake name and really be Japanese is counterintuitive a little bit to me. So it could be black, it could be, she could be, anything. So what she did was just leave something behind that we all can use, and it's hard to change because of these blocks of data. Now, if someone had tried to undermine the blockchain early on, it would have been easier because there have been so few blocks. But now we're in 2018, the Genesis block was first created in 2008. Now you're looking at a lot of blocks that you would have to undo just to change some blocks. And as you try to undo that one, they still are creating new blocks. And it's not like they stop, they keep moving. So it becomes very difficult to undo the information on those blocks. Now, I think another thing that's helpful when I talk about this data being encrypted so it doesn't get spooky is that, most folks in here look a little younger than me, but, I think black don't crack, so some of y'all might be older, but just look so good, right? Humbly. But they used to have cameras, right? And you used to have to take pictures and go down to CVS when I was at Howard and develop them. But now you got these phones and you can take pictures. And you know what? Young people don't even get the fact that you can actually look at the picture you took and say, I don't like it, and take it again. Now, I know that seems like something small, but I'm telling you, there was a time where you'd have to wait weeks if you're on a trip to go and find out if your eyes were closed or you were moving too fast and it was blurry. Now you say, I don't like that. We'll do it again, and it's just like nothing. It's because now that's data. You're able to now send those pictures because it's data. It's just like, you guys don't probably remember, falling in love and writing love letters and having to stick a stamp on it and envelope and hope they got it. Did they get it? When did she get it? I don't know. And she gonna send me a letter back. These are all archaic ways of doing a lot of things. But we make it seem like that was like 100 years ago. It wasn't 100 years ago. I didn't graduate college that long ago. But my point is, those were real analog ways that weren't digital. And it's now, it's data. So the problem, though, when you start talking about money, you know, we can pull out these dollar bills, these pieces of paper. It's ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as that letter. It's not, the love letter was a good thing, but now you send an email. You know what I'm saying? You get instant gratification. You know they got it. They send it back to you, and the love can really grow quickly. Well, when you got this dollar, you know, it's a piece of paper. It's ridiculous. The world has passed beyond having a physical piece of paper in your hand to transact with someone. So, but the issue was, that, you know, and there's quite a few issues, but one was the issue of double spending. How do you are able to spend something and make sure that you got it, and I know you know I gave it to you, and it's not like copied again like pictures. That's why there's always be careful who you send pictures to, because they can copy them. Well, when you have encrypted data, it can't be copied. So now we can send these blocks of data and they can't be copied, and you can feel secure that you have value. And this technology has allowed us now to not just move information like hi, hello, but also transact value, because that encrypted data is worth something. And then I get people saying, well, okay, this is a lot of tech talk, and then like, well, why is it worth something? You know, how does Bitcoin get its value? Well, it's just like gold. You know, gold is going to appear out of the table. It's a rock. There's nothing significant about it. It's a rock. The only reason it has value is because of consensus. Consensus meaning that we've agreed that it's worth something. When the end of the world comes, the system with the most goats is going to beat the guy with the most gold. Full stop. He's going to hang on for maybe 10 days, and he can't eat those rocks. He's going to give up all of them for one goat. And that system's going to be just as fine, you know, without the rock. She'll just probably be kind and give him the goat. My point is, it's just because we've said it. The colonizers went around the world killing people for literally rocks. That's what they are. So we have a system that's built on something, built on fictions. Well, why can't that fiction be digital now? And why can't we then, through consensus, agree on that value? So with Bitcoin, there was a big day called Pizza Day, where someone transacted like 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas, and thereby establishing a market. There's a buyer and a seller, and that buyer said, I will accept, 10,000 Bitcoin for these pizzas. And the seller said, sure, I'll sell them to you.
So
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So, because what I'm hearing, I'm hearing 2 things here. You've digitized currency, and there has to be some acceptance or some consensus around it being a legitimate form of currency. What was the threshold at what? So you did mention it just now when the guy exchanged those 2 pieces for 10,000 Bitcoin.
Right. So another thing that people don't talk about as much, there's been other attempts at creating digital value. So I'm not one of these people, but gamers had digital tokens for a long period of time. And outside of the games, they would trade these digital, not real things, and there'd be people who find value in them. So it's not, again, this is it's a part of our psychology we got to get out of. No one's that smart, okay? All of this stuff is built on iterations of brilliant people, regular people, medium people. All of us have something to contribute in this thing. So to get to Bitcoin, it wasn't like out of the sky. It actually is, a part of a iterative method of people coming up with ideas, gamifying things, doing things that make it make sense. So connecting back, the question becomes, why would somebody process these, blocks of data? Sister Satoshi said, look, if you process this data, I'm going to give you a reward. She said, you know what? If you process using your computer, the reward would be a thing called a Bitcoin. So processing these transactions to create these blocks, the Bitcoin is actually, that token is actually a reward that's given to whoever can process that block the fastest. And they call it that gamification. You oftentimes hear here called miners, the people mining Bitcoin. These people really are, the way they're able to acquire Bitcoin or mine it is by processing these transactions. And whoever can process them the fastest is rewarded with the Bitcoin. So again, figuring out how do I get people who don't know each other to be willing to use their electricity, computational power of their machines to participate in this. Well, they got a reward and called Bitcoin. Now again, going back to your point, at what time would they think that this was worth it? Well, initially, you could use a CPU, you could use a regular computer to actually mine. And then it came up with GPU, a game, basically like a game card, a graphics card. And then now you got whole, mining pools of folks processing these transactions to be rewarded with these Bitcoin. And and they call it mining because there's 21 million Bitcoins that are ever going to be created, period, full stop. So just like there's a finite amount of gold in the ground or finite amount of oil in the ground, and as you dig for more, on the continent of Africa, gold used to be on the ground. So it was very easy. Our people, again, you're talking about this Eurocentric mindset, we didn't value that inanimate object more than our own brothers and sisters. So when we were trading with folks and somebody wanted some gold, why not? It even goes back to indigenous people. They talk about European got their land for nothing. In some worldviews, people would think land and air, how can you own air? So that's fundamental. You want to buy some of my air? Sure. You have, how much you want? Sign off all the air. You can't take it anywhere. It's air. So we've been living in a society that's, the premise that we act on aren't probably supernatural. They're probably pretty savage. So in this, looking at how do we mine or create, we use these words that are connected to processes that are, in the regular world. So the miners are synonymous with somebody digging for something, and as you get to the point where your less gold is there, the process of mining or doing these transactions becomes more difficult. So it starts off with, they call it halving. Every so many transactions, so many years, the amount of rewards that you receive for doing those transactions is cut in half. So it's 25 Bitcoin at one point. Now I think it's 12.5. It cuts in half, and then I think in next year or 2020 there'll be another halving where it's actually less and it's more difficult.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Does that sound like inflation, or in a sense?
And so inflation, again, I'm a mechanical engineer, but inflation is what America does. It just prints money, and just wants you to think that your money's worth the same thing, but it's going to print 1,000 more. Inflation is that $1 can't buy as much as it used to be able to buy. It's still $1 in your pocket. Your pocket didn't change. So I do business in Zimbabwe. We're a minimum viable product. Because of our wicked policies in America, we've created some real problems for the people in Zimbabwe. We have sanctions against the people of Zimbabwe. So when they restrict the access to cash for those folks, and then they try to come up with alternative methods, they come with their own tokens, their own currencies. The United States government, we pay taxes. Anybody bought something today is paying some taxes. Are using that to create what they call, unsettled communities that hopefully in the minds of the people we elect foment regime change. So this thing about inflation, when you print too much money, you get inflation. When you try to say, I'm going to solve the problem we don't have enough money in our economy, I'm going to make more of it. Well, the reality is you've now made a bigger hole, because the more it is, supply and demand means the value of it is less. So you have $10 in your pocket, they print a bunch of these dollars, no longer is that $10 buying, some bread, the eggs, and that $10 can't even buy you a beer. I'm not saying promoting drinking beer. I'm saying, you can't buy even a $2 or $3 thing with a $10 bill. So restricting that, the creation of Bitcoin doesn't create inflation. inflation would be, instead of saying there's 21 million Bitcoin, that any amount of Bitcoin, and we decided arbitrarily that could create inflation. But because our country, I want to say another thing, that this is something I didn't realize until about 6 months ago. All of these things are fictional. The dollar is a lie. All these things are made up. But what happens because of white supremacy, what happens because of our self-hate, is that we will believe someone else's fiction is better than our fiction. So because dollars are fiction, if I created a Sinclair dollar with a European name, maybe I call it Umoja, something that's not affiliated with Europe. Let's say I did. If you have a level of self-hate, you're not going to think my money's worth anything. And if I come up with Sinclair coin and it has a, tall, white, blonde guy, you might say, man, that money's going to be worth that. I'm going to spend with this. We don't realize the implications of white supremacy has real economic consequences. So you're in Africa and you have a kwacha from Malawi. No one wants a kwacha. I was in Uganda and flew to Rwanda, so they have the Uganda shilling, and the fact it's called a shilling is problematic. And then I went to Rwanda at the airport. That's the international airport, and they have the Rwanda franc, another problematic name. And I wanted to exchange, and these countries are bordering each other, like Canada and the United States. I wanted to exchange my Uganda shillings for some Rwanda franc, just so I could be exposed to it and see what, they said we don't take that. We take the pound, the euro, and the US dollar.
So it sounds more like like you said, more like there's a demand for that type of currency at the point, which makes it more valuable. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that it's to our own detriment. If you don't value your own stuff, and you value my stuff more than your stuff, well, you're always going to have a problem. And you're going to be coming to me, I'm going to be your boss.
If I could push back against that. No, and it's fine. And not necessarily push back, but just give a perspective that I've heard when I've talked about Bitcoin to people. And people have often said that the other currencies are often backed by raw material. So if you have, currency in another country, oftentimes, just like you said, right, the dollar amount is backed by whatever natural resource they have. On the United States, because the United States is such a cesspool of capitalism and people can credit here so much, that's what makes the dollar so valuable. What say you to that point?
I just think somebody just is praying to white supremacy. That doesn't even sound like anything. Because America is, and like you saying that, because America is no, because white folks, ice is colder, it's ice. All these are fiats. All these are like fictional creations. There's nothing back in it, but the fact I said so.
Right.
There's no gold reserves that's backing anything in any country. It's only the good faith of this government saying that you can do this. If it's a white supremacist society, you're going to think that when white folks say this is okay, it's okay. What I'm saying is I'm not. However you want to live with that, I'm fine with, how people. This stuff is tough. We deal with a lot of trauma. Right. You know what I'm saying? So just to not go out of your mind on a Friday night, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes we just say things to ourselves to just make it more, more livable. Like we can just okay, because I don't want to keep hearing about white supremacy every day. Every time I pull out my money, it can actually cause a level, you just want to dumb it down a little bit. But whatever they just said, that's stop. There's no gold back in it. I just told you what gold was. So even if they tell you it was backed by gold, you can't eat gold. You can't wear it. This thing is a fiction. The only reason gold is worth anything is because of some people, probably some men, some ignorant men, went around saying this was valuable and we'll do this over the, human life. It's not. And I'm not saying, I know I've been getting hip to some of this metaphysical stuff and crystals and stuff. I'm not saying that the minerals aren't worth something, but I'm saying to go kill somebody or go around the world kidnapping, robbing, and stealing and destroying civilizations for rocks is just problematic.
So you're speaking more to the value that was placed on the material rather than its inherent value. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm saying I'm even willing to question the inherent value, but I'm saying yes. I'm saying the human beings that said that this was valuable are coming out of a very problematic place. They destroyed. You look at the pyramids in Mexico, the pyramids in Egypt, the Great Zimbabwe, the Benin Wall. There's so much civilization that was just totally ravaged because these people were looking for something. It's just really, if you think about society, it's about as ignorant as you can get. You get on a boat and travel this far just to go stick some cats up for some rocks. What about that is developing the society and advancing our civilization? No, that's backwards.
Came out of greed, it sounds like.
It comes out of probably the most wicked, sickest greed that you can imagine. And we've now normalized it as if that somehow is a principle that we should now all pursue and not, these other things. And it makes us a little crazy.
So speaking of greed, and you're bringing up a whole lot of good points. One point I liked earlier was how you said, pretty much that consensus point, when everybody has consensus that something is of value and they start using it as currency. What I've been noticing in my research is that it hasn't been until recently that the U.S. government, or just like world governments, financial systems, have wanted to jump in and, like, in a sense, regulate Bitcoin, right? Where does that take Bitcoin? Because initially in 2008, or around the time that it was incepted, people who are on the fringe, they pretty much were using it as a means to escape the financial, system. But now it seems like the folks on Wall Street and whoever else, they want to jump in and just sort of like take it over in a sense. What say you to that?
I'm probably not that good at that point. Let me say it like this. If it wasn't for regulation, Bitcoin wouldn't be as powerful as it is. So when I think, we're smarter than we give ourselves credit for. I think we're right to be skeptical about everything. Not just Bitcoin, be skeptical about everything. So I don't think having a conversation about the impact of regulation is off base. I think it's relevant. But if there wasn't a regulatory regime or system that said the dollar is traded here, the pound is traded here, the rand is traded here, the pula is traded in Botswana, the Kwanzaa, if you can imagine, the Kwanzaa is traded in Angola, that's the name of their currency. If it wasn't for all those regulations, Bitcoin wouldn't be powerful. Bitcoin becomes powerful because there's only one Bitcoin. There's no regulator saying there's just one for here and one for that. It helps, gives it its value to be used. When I have my Bitcoin wallet and I'm anywhere in the world, there's no, I've literally, less than 24 hours ago, was in Cape Town. In Cape Town, there's only one kind of Bitcoin. So all this regulation, all the restrictions over these fictions have put Bitcoin in a position where it's powerful. I give people the analogy oftentimes with technology when I bring up the taxi cab. Like, one of the most racist and oppressive and humiliating times used to be trying to catch a cab. Like, that thing sucked. Like, even at Howard, you'd have to kind of walk down towards downtown to try to catch a cab because they weren't going to stop for you. So, and we thought in the School of Engineering that was a political science problem. Meaning like the taxi commission and trying to protest somebody. We thought that was going to do it. But when they came out with these rideshare apps, and I'm saying the people who came out with them probably weren't, black nationalists. They weren't nationalists, but they weren't, they weren't trying to liberate nobody. They were trying to get their money right. But now, literally, I got from Dulles, and so I'm sorry I'm late. I left my bag in the Lyft that I had ordered. But because of Lyft, I knew who the driver was, what his car was. I reached out to them. They charged me $15. I called them, left a message. The guy called me back, and he tried to, he kind of hustled me. He said, well, I'm way out in Arlington. I could come by, but I got some other. I said, look, I tipped you. I got an event to be at 8 o'clock. The guy drove back to my house, and drove me to the ATM. I picked up some cash, took care of it, and then said, "Can you just drive me down Georgia Avenue?" He dropped me off here. Now, I'm not saying there's no taxi experiences like that, but I didn't have none. So my point is, you can make certain oppression obsolete with just using the technology. And I just think that Bitcoin is going to make some of the silliness in these regulations obsolete. Because it's just magnitudes better. Again, I'm not saying that Uber or Lyft are some magical companies. I'm not. But I'm saying how technology can take what we think is normal, meaning trying to catch a cab and being humiliated in front of your lady or anybody else. I mean, I've been through terrible situations. But now there's a technology that's allowed us the opportunity to at least change that. A brother or sister could actually drive for Uber or Lyft in their neighborhood. A neighborhood that may not have been accessible by cabs, they didn't want to go there. Well, now that person can corner the market on their neighborhood because that's where they're from. And they know that neighborhood, they offering rides. Now listen, again, we didn't come up with it. So I'm not saying that I'm saying this is something that is amazing. We should maybe come up with our own ride share. But with the regulatory regime, I'm saying it made it, the taxis being how they were, made it something for us. The way these regulatory agencies are working with holding us back, with exchanging value, actually create opportunities for innovations like Bitcoin that probably wouldn't have happened if there was a much easier way for us to move things around.
And you sort of speak to that a couple times when I first met you, and you were at the conference pretty much talking about how Bitcoin can be not necessarily an alternative, but it can help us beyond what politics can do in terms of just freeing our people and just really, I guess, pressuring the powers that be to change their tone towards us. You know, if we find different ways to move economically, if I remember correctly. Like,
I didn't say that. But they can do whatever they want to do. I'm willing to compete with anybody in the open marketplace. If you want to be racist and ignorant and sexist, you put your squad together, I'm going to put my squad together, I'm going to whoop you on the field. Because I'm not going to pick people based on those ridiculous things. I want the most amazing people, the most creative, dynamic people. I'm not trying to integrate, diversify. Look, you deserve what you get for being racist. A bunch of silly friends that are racist like you. I'm saying I'm going to have a great, marvelous group of people, and we're going to have a marvelous time. And then if this is our last hour alive, I'm going to tell them I was right here rocking the mic with some black folks on a Friday talking about Bitcoin. I want to say that I want to live that life, and they can live their racist life. So I don't think we use this to change anything. I say we use this to improve our situation. And if they change, God bless them, maybe they will see the light. I'm not, and I'm not here to be negative. They ultimately see that what they had done was wrong and they changed their ways, then so be it. But I'm not waiting for somebody to come save us. I'm going to do as much to liberate myself and liberate with our company. One of our catchphrases is decolonize your life. I'm not going to you got to do your own decolonization. Now, I'm going to show you some tools, and I'm going to free myself, and I'm going to give you some opportunity to help as many people as I can, but you got to do it for yourself. And I don't think it's trying to get the liar to stop lying. It's more like stop believing the lie. The liar might keep lying. Well, I don't believe that. And keep going this way. So in a real way, I think it's not about changing how these folks are as the drive. I think the drive is how do we become the most excellent, amazing people that we possibly can be, and use those tools and create those tools to allow us to do that. I did politics, it was horrible. DC politics, and this is black on black, it was horrible. So, I'm just saying, I know even protesting, I've been protesting since '88. I think it's a good thing. I think protest is good for the soul. I think all of it's right. I think waking up and then just being outraged is fair. But brother, I'm just looking at the distance that we've got out of that. In engineering, in science, work is force times distance. So W equals FD, right, times D, right? So you can do a whole lot of force. If that jink don't move nothing, there's no work done. And I've been in plenty of protests, you know, from the first Persian Gulf War to stopping them, closing down HBCUs to no Aristide, no peace, no air. And it was, you remember that, the hate, and even the don't go to Shell. Remember we couldn't go to Shell because they were supporting apartheid. Mm-hmm. So my point is, all that, and I just left Cape Town. I'm like, is this what we was fighting for? That's all bad for black folks in Cape Town. That thing is real tight. So my point is, I think technology now at 49, I think has the ability to create more scalable, amazing solutions instead of waiting for the next election. I love Obama, and I'll never be on the microphone saying anything bad about Obama, okay? With that being said, I'm clear. We had our first black president, okay? Just saying, so I'm not delusional with this, and I'm clear what the consequences happen now. I'm saying that in a private business using technology, trying to do something amazing that changes things, I think is more efficient than waiting for another election to come. I mean, Ben Jealous ran for governor in Maryland. Now, as black as Maryland is, they had two brothers run back to back, and they still can't find any way to get a black governor. Now, that's some, man, look, man, we own some. I think we own all kinds of things, including opioids. I'm just saying it's to wait for that process. Right. Even the party system, if you start looking at it inside, the party system is a lie. These systems that we bought into that we think are the way that people should govern themselves are problematic. Even when we talk about Bitcoin, people talk about governments, and people talk about governance. How do we form consensus? How do we decide together to operate? Do you need a government centralized to do that? Or is there a decentralized way where we can govern ourselves through governance without electing somebody? This technology does open those conversations because there's no Microsoft in charge of Bitcoin. So through these miners, through the exchanges, people are able to, what they call forks. When people decide that they want to change what's going on, someone decides to write some code a little different than the first, original code. If they get enough of the miners to agree with that through consensus, then you can actually change Bitcoin. But up until then, you can't. So my point is, even the use of technology to come up with alternative ways of governance, I think is interesting, and how you can use technology to do things to change that politics, protesting, or philanthropists are lying. Anyway.
No problem. I got a couple questions for you. So, you're doing really well. I appreciate you, and I love your enthusiasm for this subject. Now, for somebody like myself who doesn't know too much about coding or about stuff like that, how do I get inside the Bitcoin market? How do I jump into it? What does it take? Because even from what I recall, last time, Bitcoin was up like a few, maybe like $60,000 a share or something like that. Yeah, it was, how do I jump into that space, me being a regular old, Joe Schmo like myself?
So, okay, I got into Bitcoin, and this is the bifurcation conversation. Let me go and switch up. Some of us, when we first got into Bitcoin, we didn't know it was going to go to 19,000 like it did. We didn't know it was going to go to 6,000. Some of us got in when it was like $200. We didn't know that it was going to be. What some of us thought was that the legacy system of Western Union, Barclays, Bank of America were wicked, oppressive systems that had to be changed. And we thought by the amount of money that those legacy systems were able to generate for themselves, that we could render those systems obsolete and make money, not because of the value of Bitcoin, but by the fact that we took the business away from those folks and we used the blockchain to do it. So with like a Bitmari, to even think that you could create a remittance company prior to blockchain would be very difficult. The Western Unions, the MoneyGrams have a duopoly, and they've created, systems that are very difficult and expensive to replicate now. But the blockchain made it so I could transact with someone anywhere in the world for almost nothing. And we got transaction fees and there's things like that, but nowhere near, like Africa has the highest remittance fees than any other continent in the world. It can be 10 to 15% on your dollar to send money from Botswana to Zimbabwe. And the only reason it is because there's a duopoly, a neo-colonial system. In Bitmari, we talk about colonialism. Even if you take the race out, what we say is the colonizer never was willing to fairly compensate the folks they were doing business with, full stop. You take all the things out, the Arab, whoever colonized, they never were willing to fairly compensate the folks they were doing transactions with. You don't have to whoop me and shoot me and rape people to exchange value. You can give me some equity. But the colonizer was not willing to do that. They'd rather use brutality to exchange value. So what's going on now, currently, in our neighborhoods here, I used to have 2 dry cleaners on George Avenue when I went bankrupt. It was in 2003. Just trying to get insurance was difficult. Just little things like that. Just trying to get good employees who were willing to, I had to say Upper Northwest when I was advertising for a seamstress job, because when I said George Avenue, they wouldn't even respond. But once they did respond, and they said, so where is it? And I said, I think the parking's bad over there. Fine. My point is, there's a lot of things that are going to cause us problems in getting access to this information. I think we got to figure out a better way of doing it. And I think, using this technology is a better solution than anything else that I've found.
Definitely. And if you could talk to us about Zimbabwe, what's Bitmari doing in Zimbabwe as far as just using Bitcoin to help people in the absence of, I guess, a stable currency in that country?
All right, so we actually did our minimum viable product. So in the startup space, they got these terms of art, words they use called MVPs. So there's a thing called the lean startup methodology. In traditional engineering or product development, you have a group of people trying to come up with everything that folks would want to build something. We got this bell, this whistle, all that. And then a year later, they would then bring it to the market. And then if it failed, they just wasted a whole bunch of time. In the lean startup methodology, you come up with the minimum viable product. So let me say it another way. The one I just gave you would be the maximum viable product. The thing you think everybody would want, and this is everything they need. And if it fails, you just wasted a lot of time and money. The lean startup method is the minimum viable product. You just provide the market with the minimum thing you think it needs, and then let the market tell you what they want added on. So that speed to market, it becomes the issue. You want to get the market, and you want to be what they call agile. You want to get the market fast, and then let the people tell you, oh, I wish you could do this. So it's incomplete, but yet people will tolerate the incompleteness because this is something they're interested in. The first iPhone had bugs in it. The people who adopt those things early, they call them early adopters. Right. So when you present something in technology, you're not trying to get the traditionalists to buy your product. You want to get the people who like to get the new thing. And then they're normally a little bit more robust in their behavior, being like, even if it's not even the first iPhone, the next iPhone that comes out is going to have bugs in it. But there's some people, every time an iPhone comes out, they got to be the one with that iPhone. That person is an early adopter. You can try new things on them, and they'll be able to be resilient, give you some feedback, and then once you get it really the way it needs to be, then you put more marketing dollars on it and blow it up. So for us, and even in the startup world, there's very few indigenous African, so-called African American co-founders. If you have an indigenous African brother, he might have a European co-founder or Asian co-founder, and it's African American, it's African American and a European, and they're just looking at the United States or something. but my mentor, he went to Howard, Mr. Christopher Mapandera, and I are co-founders, and we've tried to use this technology in Zimbabwe because prior to that, we had been working on projects in the agricultural space, like ethanol. But the biggest thing was always hard to do was move money. And so when Bitcoin came around, we thought this would be a great opportunity. We had a bank partner we had already been working with called AgriBank, and they're based, their mission is to provide, capital and financing for the agricultural sector. And we were able to work with them to get a license. And we were the first blockchain company to explicitly receive a license to use Bitcoin for remittances. So that license ended in July. So we right now going through the process of renewing and now expanding. So we think we've done a good job, and we were able to get our product in about 47 branches throughout the country and get people to use it effectively. The bank's been pleased. It's another revenue for them. And now we're trying to expand to about 20 other countries. And a lot of that's because if you just have one country, Zimbabwe is amazing, but there's only 16 million people. So it's a very small population. So we're trying to get, the remittance space is it's a number of transaction games. So you need to be in a position to get the most amount of transactions as possible. And from there, we think that remittance is just the beginning. We are now are devising our own, I won't say cryptocurrency, but we've come up with a concept called coupons. So you say tokens or cryptocurrency, a lot of times people are like, what is that? But my mom knows what a coupon is, right? And it implies a transaction in itself. It's a business word. Even though we throw it around so much, you get a coupon for that. So what we're looking at is incentivizing folks to use our remittance service by giving them these I Love Black People coupons. And we're building also either through directories that already exist, Black directories of businesses and services internationally, where you could use that coupon not just for our remittance services, but hopefully we'll be able to build a community of Black-owned businesses that you can use those tokens also. It's still a token, but instead of calling it a token, it's still encrypted data that's not able to be counterfeited, right? But we're calling them coupons in a way that even if you don't want to just, some people haven't gone to Bitcoin yet. Some people haven't used these other tokens. What we said is, look, let's meet our people where they are. If they're still using cash, if they use this token, they just have to use less cash, just like a coupon does. And you start getting people now trading in these coupons, and now you start developing a system that allows people now to go to something new that's not crazy sounding. It's still coupon. So for us, the entree to this is remittances to Zimbabwe, where we've done a minimum viable product. But what we think we can do is pull together the global Black community. Now, a lot of people don't realize that if you talk about people of European descent, that's about 600 million people. That's the ones in South Africa, the ones in Australia, the ones here. But if you take all the people that look like us, of African descent, you're looking at closer to like 1.5 billion at least. That's about the size of China. But before this moment in history, there's been a thing they call a classic market failure, meaning that there was no way to connect us. It was very difficult, very difficult to connect us. But now we have the internet, we have these amazing things called smartphones, a computer, and we have now a way to transact value, blockchain. So what was done to destroy and try to undermine our people through the triangle slave trade and all these other horrible things, we have tools now that we can connect ourselves back together and we can transact with each other. And again, everybody's not going to do it, but we think creating that infrastructure becomes amazing. Like there's already lots of Black business directories. We're not trying to compete, but we would love to have those Black directories use a payment platform like Bitmari. And that goes back to your question. We think that the value of Bitcoin is fine, whatever it is, but we think the power is it's actually a payment platform on the internet. And when we do the analogy, there's a real brilliant brother named Reggie Middleton, and he gave an analogy. The dollar bill, if you make it analogous to a car, it still needs a road. It needs either Visa, it needs PayPal, it needs a bank transfer to actually use it, or it'll just be stuck in your hand. Bitcoin is the car, store value, and the road, all combined into one. You don't need anything in addition. You don't need a Visa to transact your Bitcoin. So in a real way, you don't need a third party to intercede or facilitate your transaction. So now we can do peer-to-peer transactions.
We don't need like an app or something like that, or how would I go about?
Okay, so you use app. You would still ultimately not have to use the internet. And this goes back to my failure of explaining this well. When you have Bitcoin, there's two pieces that identify your Bitcoin. You have the public address and the private address, or private key. We call it public key or private key. The public key or public address is like your bank account number. If you give it to me, I can put money in your bank account, but I can't take it out. The private key is like your PIN. Don't give me that, because if you give me your PIN and your account number, I can take money out. So when we're talking about how we're able to move these monies, if you have a private key and a public key, we're not able to. If you keep your private key to yourself and you give somebody your public key, you can transact. I lost my train of thought. What was the?
As far as just using an app, like you said.
Right. So you give me your private key and your public key with no internet. I can actually have a paper wallet. They call them paper wallets. With that information on it, I can hand you with some Bitcoin, even with no internet going on. Now, the trick is you won't be able to verify it until you get access to the internet. Okay. So even when you hear people say they got a wallet, your physical Bitcoin is not physically in your phone or in your, it's actually on a blockchain. It's actually on the internet. So you're not, what you're giving someone is information to get access to that network. That network which is running on all these thousands of miners' computers. You're getting access to that. But physically you're not possessing that. You're actually giving access to that. So you literally could have a public, it's like, alphanumeric, public key and a private key, and there'd be, let's say, one Bitcoin in it. I can just hand it to you. And we just transact it using Bitcoin. And then you go online, and then you download it, and it's a QR code, and you swipe it, and you can put it on your phone, meaning put that information that gives you access to that one Bitcoin, because you now have the private and the public key. But you don't need that's what I'm saying. You don't need a third party. You don't need a Microsoft or Oracle or Visa in order to transact your Bitcoin. You literally don't, it's you and me, which is kind of amazing.
So it sounds pretty egalitarian, like just in the sense that, so I guess my question is.
So it's, the information is not, what I learned in the tech space, like I said, I've been in engineering. I've worked for companies like McDonnell Douglas making horrible weapons of mass destruction like F-18s, and I worked for Honeywell making the space shuttles, main controller, those are things. But in this tech, like Silicon Valley stuff, it's still racist. I tell people, so there's racism here in DC, and there's racism in the South. I think Silicon Valley is racist, but they have to be probably some of the most optimistic racists I've ever met. Like, you talk to them, they're like, you know what, we're gonna have spaceships and we're gonna fly. Now, y'all gonna be in the engine room, but we're gonna have spaceships. Now, why y'all gonna project in the future segregation? Like, who wants a future? Who closes their eyes and sees suppression like that? No, we're gonna have a future just like I have no crazy stuff in it. But what'll happen, you'll hear those crazy things. So I think it's not egalitarian in the sense that the access to the information is not readily accessible to everybody, and the access to programming. I think not enough brothers and sisters are actively engaged. Like the Bitcoin blockchain, the code base is C++. We need more brothers and sisters who can code. and we use, we're
Would you
using,
mind breaking that down for us? Because my younger brother actually, 13 months apart, he's not really, let's just say my average, I don't even like that saying, but he's like my twin kind of, but he's into that type of stuff. What's C++? Break that down for us.
so C++ is a programming language. So there are different languages that have their own syntax. So, not making it spooky, the original programming languages were what? Were our ancient languages, right? When we had our languages and other folks didn't know what we were saying, that was our syntax. Our language, that was our innovation. Being able to, and people would keep them secret because we didn't want you to know. So now we have programming language that are actually instructions. And these languages give instructions in some, as we've gotten high level languages, and there's like a low level, like machine languages, like zeros and ones, that are able to give instructions for the, a device, the computer to do certain things. As we've been able to develop these languages, we come up with languages that look closer or imitate more of what we associate with regular language. So you'll have commands. Let's say go. Well, the computer really don't know what go means. So there's really underlying in there some zeros and ones saying that. But even when I was in Zimbabwe, they said when you're programming in C++, a particular programming language, they said you should always do it in your own native language. So if you speak Shona, your comments should be in Shona, because that's your first line of security. So don't use English. Everybody know English. If you're writing a program and you want to add your level of security, of course there's other things they do. The only language I learned was Fortran, and that was years ago. But there's things you can do when you're programming. If somebody ever sees your language, then they're not going to be able to readily understand because they don't know Shona, which is one of the languages they speak in Zimbabwe and Ndebele and a few other ones. So it's just instructions given to a computer, and it's now getting easier and easier because the instructions look more like something people are familiar with. And now they even have words that represent libraries of words. So it's real portable. When I was doing it, you had to write every instruction, like turn on mic, or move finger to button, flip. Now you can say just turn on mic. Because that, deep down in there, still going through move finger, but the language you're able to use is high level and you can kind of make it seem simple. But learning those languages give you the power to build things in a much faster way. Like I'm a mechanical engineer. I work for a company making incubators for babies, one of my favorite jobs. But to go from concept to, design, to prototype, to pilot, to production could be like 2 years. With this code, you'd be sitting in the bathroom writing code. You delete, come up with some more stuff. It's simply amazing. And my older brother's been in and out of prison, and I said to him, when you're looking for somebody to code, they don't ask you if you got a degree or not. It doesn't. We want to know if you can actually do the work. So you got people from Estonia, folks from Bangladesh, people writing code all over the world. So when I talk to brothers and sisters, I say, look, this is one thing that you can actually work anywhere you want to and actually make money and build things you're interested in. We program in Python. That's the language we use. It's a language that is very popular in the financial technology arena. But there's Go. There's a host of different languages that people are using. Of course, JavaScript. People do all that stuff on websites and things. But I think it's one of the areas that if we got more involved in, we could create and build for ourselves. What it took to build Uber or Lyft is not inventing anything. They took existing technology and innovated on it. My last job, where I was, working on a plantation, if you will, was the U.S. Patent Office in Crystal City. Well, you don't have to invent things now. You actually can take existing things and just put them together in a different way. Software is a great way to do that. But again, we're still waiting on somebody to come up with something. We can actually do that, and we're so creative. So it's not like, we don't have what it takes. They still can't do the things we've done.
Forgive me because I kept trying to jump in as you were talking. Nah, you fine. And I've been doing that through the entire interview because you've been dropping a whole lot of gems. and I really want the audience to get what I've been hearing, and I know they've been hearing it as well. So as far as the whole C++ thing, right, where at one point you had to like write out the language piece by piece for the commands, and then now you can write one command, and then under that you have a whole bunch of stuff. What was the time period where you got from that to the new stuff? Like what, like over how many years or decades did it take for us to get to that point in the C++?
Trying to see. Look, I left my dang wallet and I'm looking for my phone. Hold on a second. Is that wrong for me to go?
No, go ahead, dude.
He got on the middle of my show and he started looking for his phone.
Now, do you? We chilling here.
And look, and I'm not a loser of keys and stuff. I'm not that guy. I keep up with stuff. But the day I left my bag, now I'm like, man, I can't. And my wife comes in town at midnight. I gotta keep myself together. I apologize. C++.
So yeah, so like, if you can like estimate for us, over what period of time or amount of time did it take for C++ to develop so quickly where you could just type in a simple command, and then under all that you have all these binary codes like the zeros and ones and all that, you know, because
Yeah, so, and I was at Tuskegee before I came to Howard. So in '93, we were using C. It wasn't C++ yet. I would be lying if I told you I knew the actual time that it took for it to change. I think part of it, again, is demand and complexity. NASA trying to get a rocket into outer space, they weren't using C. And some of the languages they're still using in government are pretty old. You know, COBOL, Pascal, they're not using a lot of, there's a lot of legacy languages. But as far as how long it takes, I'm not sure of. But I would also say that it's not beyond us to create our own languages. See, that's the thing that is that we're told something crazy. Like all this stuff, people did. So we can do any of it. And we have. Sometimes we don't even get credit, of course, for the things that we have contributed to. It gets, somehow swept under the rug. But as inspiration, not just for young people, coding is something that anybody at any age could actually learn how to do within a year and put themselves in a freelance situation where they're willing to do jobs online and make $50 to $70 an hour.
And I think that speaks to what you said earlier, just about, because that's what we're moving toward now, see, in these industries. People aren't really, and I'm not going to knock, college degrees totally, but in terms of the whole technology and, people are looking more for, I guess, skills rather than like.
I'll knock it for you. College is overrated, overpriced, over a whole bunch of things. Let's just say that. Let's just tell the truth. On a Friday night with no beers yet. I got kicked out of school because we were protesting Tuskegee raising tuition. This is in '92, and then recently the Howard students had their protest. I didn't know it was $40,000. Look, there's nothing that you finish college that's worth $120,000. Yeah, that's just that's. And then if you really look at these cats in Silicon Valley, most of them drop out of college. I say no way. They may tell you they went to Stanford, but if Stanford was actually the reason why they were so successful, they would have to meet the requirements and complete that degree. They don't even finish. And if it's just a class they took, we all should just take that class and be successful. Well, maybe there's something else going on here. And if you go to places, my wife is Dominican, it's like $1,000 a year to go to school 3 times a year. In Zimbabwe, it's about the same. And in some places, it's free. This is mark my words, that's the next bubble. This is a hustle. School don't cost that much. Think about it. It used to be paper, books. Now stuff is online. All the stuff is digital. And they ain't paying them professors more money. They'll bring some over here and they try to help them keep them here with their paperwork, and then they're paying them subpar, because they from someplace else, and they don't even hire African Americans no more at black schools. So my point is, I didn't mean to go there. I apologize for that. I'm pro-black globally, but I'm just saying. My point is, this is you're allowed to do that. the system is allowing us to leave in debt like that. And it's wrong. And we just need to say it. We shouldn't do that to our children. And we're not going to, you talk about white supremacy, you talk about what these other universities have done. We're not going to catch up by imitating them. We're going to come up with other methods. We can't imitate that because we're at a deficit. So we can't saddle our children with the same baggage they saddle in theirs with, because it's hard to run faster. So in a real way, I think there's a program, Lambda School. Lambda School, if you get into the school, and this is Europeans doing it, but I think it's an awesome concept. You don't pay for the school until you finish the program and get a job making over $60,000. So Lambda School, it teaches you how to program. If you get into the program, you gotta take a test to get into the school. It's online school. You pass the test and you take the course, and they don't charge you until you complete the course and receive a job making at least $60,000, and they give you like 4 years to pay back the tuition. There's was it Treehouse? There's another one where they charge you like $25 a month to get access to information to learn how to code. I think the thing that we're doing in Zimbabwe, we're doing agriculture, food security, and we're doing technology. I think fundamentally the land and the food is super important. We got to be able to control that self-determination. And I think for the folks saying into that, we got some technology that can be used to enhance the said agriculture that we're talking about. So I think there's a lot of ways at approaching this, but I think college and the universities, I just think it's a big bubble, it's a hustle, and we need to stop lying. And we're the adults. Like when we were in school, we were protesting the adults. Now we're the adults, and we're like perpetrating the same fraud. Like, no, I'm gonna say, no, it is the fraud. And then I'm willing to accept the consequences of that. But it's the truth I know. It don't cost that much. Especially undergrad. And you can start talking about physical plant research capabilities at the graduate school level and access. But math, basic sciences, English, history, $40,000 a year.
Those are just basically for the amenities, if even that, and even just you're talking about paying the university officials and everybody getting paid before the students don't even get that much out of the experience. They just get that, just like you said. So that point, I'll definitely agree with. My next question, and this has to do with education. How do we go about instilling the fundamentals of math and science in our children? Just so that, because I'm assuming I'm not a techie at all by any means, but wouldn't you need some sort of foundational knowledge of addition, subtraction, science, stuff like that in order to use C++ and just other means?
Yeah, the politics, I got involved in education politics because a good friend of mine, Adrian Fenty, was mayor. And they started firing teachers and replaced them and had Michelle Reed. I think that's another fraud. This public education system is a big fraud. Little kids want to learn. You got to do a lot of work to make them not want to learn and fight people that act crazy. Meaning that a little baby without a curriculum goes from 0 to 2. But they walking, talking, and doing all kinds of things. With no curriculum, no high science involved. The little brain computer wants to learn, to make it not, and I've traveled and worked in over probably 50 countries. I don't care how poor you are. People love to learn. That's not, to create this society where students are fighting teachers, it takes a lot of work to make that happen. Because that's just not natural. People have been learning for thousands of years without fighting the teacher. So, instead of us acting like public school works, and then getting into the debate, charter school, no, all of them sorry. All of them are doing what they plan to do. Public schools suck, public housing sucks, public law enforcement suck. All these things suck because they do what they're designed to do. Public housing was designed to destroy our families. It's very successful. Public education. You can talk about racism all you want. the Ku Klux Klan and everybody else, but the stuff we all learned in school was about the most racist stuff you can learn. Now, I don't care if Johnny or JoJo went home and was taught racism in the house. When you go to school and they tell you about the Native Americans, Indians, and the cowboys came and saved them, and that stuff's just a lie. If you, without one racist in the room, you learn that black people were savages in Africa, slaves in America, and Martin Luther King freed us. Now listen, this is not all right. This is in the school books. This is in D.C. I remember they used to beat my man Adrian up because he had the Korean lady as the chancellor. And I'm like, I can't do that as a black girl. Well, listen, there was nothing black about the curriculum, though. Now, I mean, look, would I have picked her? I'm not going to say I would pick her or not. But my point is, there was nothing black about what we were teaching kids in D.C. for the last 50 years. So to say, oh, how dare they have it? Keep it 100. We don't care about that, obviously, because you ain't teaching them nothing no different than they learn it in Mississippi or Utah. So let's have a real conversation about why does this education do what it does. It's designed to do that. And until we stop as adults going along with the lie, I think, blockchain and Bitcoin, I think, can help create, systems of cooperative education or homeschools where you can now transact and secure the data, curriculums, identities, and transactions. So I think I'm bringing it back to blockchain. You can actually, change these systems, but we just you can't even get to changing the system if you still believe the system is broke. No, the system is working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's not broke. Now, they do use teachers, like our friends who went to school with us, who we love. So they use, it's like a bad pimp game. They use folks that we know love us as the face of it. Okay, so that teacher is a good person. They're not trying to diabolically undermine the development of our people, but the system they're in is wicked as hell. And even though we love that teacher, the system that teacher is participating in is doing nothing for the last 30, 40 years but destroy our people. It don't take, I'm in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has the highest level of literacy than any other country in Africa. That's in spite of the sanctions that our government, and we should all call our CBC members and get them to change that wicked policy. But with $5, they're able to teach these wonderful young people how to do amazing things with no money. This country's spending billions, literally, to make sure JoJo and Ray Ray are fighting teachers in school. So it's not by some, mistake. This is purposeful. The police murder us. Okay, if we have a conversation about anything, voting, election, if you can't keep the police, the government, from murdering you, you don't have political power. Can we just be clear? If you can't stop the police from just blowing your head off on video, how much political power do you really got? You vote. I mean, and again, now it's after election. You said it before election, black people say, oh, you say you can't vote? No. Do all the things you want to do. Do all of it. But let's just have a real conversation so that we're not like this fictional, fake space. They are murdering us tonight. So we're not even talking about people far away. We're not talking about Afghanistan. Here, right here, somebody is being murdered by the police.
So I have a question for you. So you're of the belief that economics is our base, pretty much?
Yeah, I think economics, you end up making prostitutes and pimps. I think we need people who fundamentally are willing to fight for freedom at all costs and liberation. I think the money, now listen, you can make and lose. The only thing we can't get more of is time. I don't care. I have an airplane, I have a Porsche, I got a few houses. That stuff don't. If my people if I still being oppressed, what does that matter? I paid off the car and the plane is a fun thing. But my point is, so what? What am I going to say when folks ask me what was going on in America? With all my business overseas, when Obama got elected, what a lot of folks overseas thought was that, first of all, they thought black folks had maybe a higher population. They thought were more like 30 or 40%. Because if you think about the images, even as wicked as they are, there's so many images of Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali. They see so many African Americans, so our population is disproportionate. Our representation can seem like it's something different. And then they came out with that, what's the lady, the man dressed in the dress, and that kind of got tough. What's the Yeah, that Perry guy kind of threw it off. But my point is, people saw a lot of images. So when we got Obama in there, a lot of people I was doing business with were like, wow, y'all got power. So it was like, yo, you know, I was cutting deals and people really was grooving like, y'all, you African Americans got it going on. So I'm like, yeah, got it going on. But you know, we gotta do strategy. Okay? And then they started seeing these TV shows or videos where black folks get blown, their heads blown all the way off by the police. They're like, wait a minute. In my country, if we have, now this is not some African where this but they say in my country, if we got the president, the police don't kill us. Like, that's just fundamental. If you get the president, then everything around the government is your stuff, and nobody do bad things to him. Well, next thing you know, they started looking at me skeptical. Like, what's going on? The reality is, the system.
I got a question for you then on that. So, nah, you good. Please, no need, because this is always going to happen. You're going to drop something, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask you a question about that. Has that, by any chance, opened the conversation for anything related? Of course, you're doing business. You mentioned that you and your mentor, you guys are like virtually the only Pan-African pair in that space. Well, I'm not sure the only, but
yeah, it's some, but not enough.
Yeah. So, like, has those conversations pretty much opened up potential for more Pan-African relationships? Now that the people that you're conducting business with on the continent, they see that having a black president doesn't equate to power for black Americans over here. Has that by any chance, you know, after they've seen the reality, has that pretty much, you know, made them want to, you know, reach out more or to find ways to make a connection, you know, with us that goes beyond business, where, you know, one day we could have some diplomatic support over here so that when police are blowing our heads off, we can call up people on the continent and be like, well, listen, you know, we're going to need you to support us like the Chinese support their own when they're over here going through stuff, you know?
I just left this conference called AFRICOM in Cape Town, and it's supposed to be like the telcos and technology, and it's a lot of, you see that we have a little stickers. So we own a domain called ILoveBlackPeople.com, and that's a part of our campaign about linking global black communities. So you download our app. What we want to do is be able to create a global black community at 1.5 billion people. And there'll be people who argue saying black, we're African. Look, you go to Africa, you're going to have Europeans saying they're African. You're going to have Indians saying they're African. So it got tricky for me. I didn't know until I got over there. A whole bunch of folks rocking they African, but they ain't African. Okay. So my point is, there's a whole bunch of layers to this, and the most educated, here's another thing that we get misrepresented. Oftentimes, the indigenous African brothers and sisters that we meet that can travel to America, they're not the same folks that can't travel to America. So you get there's a little, I won't say classes, and not everybody's on some rocket ship somewhere, but when you start dealing with like regular folks that are really you, who couldn't go to college in another country, you realize the closer people are to, I think, their cultural understanding of who they are and loving who they are, the conversation about connecting is easier. When I'm in the tech space, you know, I go to these tech hubs. And so I'm going to tech hubs in Europe and Asia. So you go to a tech hub in Japan, everything is in Japanese. You go to a tech hub in Germany, everything's in German, and they got like pictures of Daimler, Benz, all these guys. You go to Japan, the same thing, all their Mitsubishi guys. And then you go to Silicon Valley, they got, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates. You go to the continent of Africa, everything's in English, and they got Mark Zuckerberg again. So we made sure that when we had our startup, that we made sure we put our heroes. We put the folks we thought were disruptive and innovative. So we got Thomas Sankara, we got Marcus Garvey, we got Queen Nzinga, we got Patrice Lumumba, we got Cecil Fatima from Haiti, we got Kwame Nkrumah, we got Samora Michelle. And when we say, these folks are liberation heroes. So they had an idea, a concept, and they fought against big odds. They dropped out of school, a lot of these startups, and they had this idea, and a lot of their friends and family like, you ain't gonna win. Why are you doing it? And in spite of all that, they were to disrupt and change the world that they lived in forever. So on the continent, I've seen more educated technologists, indigenous African people, associate innovation with westernization. And they, just like the schools here, they know more about France and England than they know about the neighboring country. And I was a little disheartened. There's a company, and on our app, we want to connect not just African American Black-owned business, but we want indigenous African businesses to get access. We're spending $1.3 trillion. You know, we don't have enough Black-owned business. Why not have some African-owned businesses if we can do some things online with them, right? And there was this one company from Uganda, from Kampala, and they had these like children books. And you can look it up, Mixer Kids. I think it's called Mixer Kids. And the images they had, they were Black kids, so I'm kind of hyped about it. And when I was talking to the brother, he was positive, and I got a little niece that's 2 years old. And without actually going to the site, I actually sent the link and said, hey, check this out, you know, because I know when I see my niece, she's looking at little, you know, her little iPad or tablet. She always got like little images. It was like a lot of European kids, but you know, little animals too, but you know, whatever. But I was like, man, this is cool. Some indigenous African brothers and sisters got content for the kids. This would be real culturally cool. And I didn't look, but the images that these indigenous Black folks had for little kids was crazy. They had kids on the front of the book, don't smoke. Little kids smoking, but the whole thing was like, don't smoke. And if you go to this website, this is created by Black folks. All the Black kids looked like they were traumatized. Like, you know how like you look at the stories of European kids that even, you know, what's the lady in the Big Bad Wolf, what was that? Little Red Riding Hood, she looked joyful. You know what I'm saying? The wolf was about to get her. But the images they showed, Little Red Riding Hood was like, you know, delightful. Like, hey, man, they was some of the darkest, and I don't mean dark, but like real negative images. And they had one book called Vampire. And it was a little girl that had like a perm and like looked like she was about our complexion. He's on the back of her like, this is for little kids, Vampire. I'm like, who was it? I'm saying psychologically, emotionally, we're in the best position to change it. There's no other time than we can connect and actually undo. I think we can undo this unnatural system in less than 50 years. The system that's making us do these crazy things, I don't think it's sustainable. You gotta keep lying on us. The truth is we're not like this. But if we let the lie exist unchallenged, like Malcolm said, and of course he got that from Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I know people give Malcolm credit, but Honorable Elijah Muhammad actually. Anyway, my point though is, the dirty glass, clean glass. We don't offer the clean glass. So a thirsty people are gonna drink out of any glass. We, more than any time in history, in a place like Sankofa, we can put images out that are hot, that are attractive, that actually change. People know the school system sucks. Look at it. Like I said, we got kids fighting teachers. All we gotta do is just make something a little better than that. I mean, of course, we make it much better than that. We don't have, the competition with this wicked system is worse than the taxi cabs. So we come up with our own Uber or Lyft for every other, our own ride share for all these engagements, we will render this system obsolete. So again, I'm not trying to change them. Do what you do on the marketplace. I'll whoop you. Because what you're doing, it's crazy. So, but my point is, we don't use these tools. So programming for the sake of programming, you put out bad content with the Black vampire eating the light-skinned sister. I'm saying, no, you gotta have, and even in Bitmari, what we say is, you have to have cultural competency as well as technical competency. You gotta have cultural competency so you understand the problems our people face, but that's not enough. You end up being a preacher or something. You gotta also have technical competency so you got to devise a solution. So for us, it's a two-part thing, because again, you'll find ways to recolonize us with technology without the right orientation. So I think as African Americans, even though we don't know our names, my name is Sinclair Skinner. I'm changing my last name. I am, probably within a year. A year. Moyo means heart. Shona as well as in Swahili. And Swahili is a little iffy as an indigenous language. But my point though is we can actually change these things, and I think more than any other time in history, we have the tools. We have to have the willingness. Now that we know getting a black president ain't gonna do what we thought it was gonna do, unless somebody thought that's what it was gonna do. Maybe someone's delusional. Now that we know no one's coming to save us, I think there are so many ways that we can save ourselves. I think Bitmari, what we're doing is something that it'd be great if you guys could join us and help us in doing this liberation. But it don't have to be one. It could be 10 or 20. And that's another thing you're talking about, working with folks. And I'm not trying to get sexist here, but sometimes men are very difficult to work with. Okay? You can help them out a lot and they still resent you. You're like, man, you sleep on my couch. Oh, no, I don't need you. Wait a minute, okay? My point is, we got to figure out how to better work with each other, and so that it doesn't have to be one solution, it can be multiple solutions, and we can work together. We can collaborate. And the parts of this that we don't want to work together on, cool. Don't make a fictional, silly, juvenile unity. And we can collaborate based on the things that we have a common interest in. And the things that we don't, then we do our own thing. You know what I'm saying? So with this technology, I think it gives us that opportunity to do, and we don't need everybody. We just need enough, a critical mass.
I keep trying to tell. Can you say that one more time, please? We say that we don't need what? Say it again.
We don't need everybody. We just need enough. But that's every. My father's amazing. My parents been married over 50 years now. But when Martin Luther King died, my dad was in the military. He didn't protest nothing. Okay? I love my father. Everybody's role in this, I don't believe in some fake purity. You know what I'm saying? I've been kicked out of school. I've been vilified in the Washington Post. I've experienced every negative thing for being righteous and committed to our people. Everybody ain't built that way. But if they're not, it's okay. In the liberation struggle, some people just made sure people had food in the bush. Everybody wasn't shooting. So to make it that everybody got to do the same thing the same way, I used to have a real, and may she rest in peace, I had a delusional, crazy impression of Frances Cress Welsing. I was like, well, she got all these philosophies. Why is she out here? She was doing what she was supposed to do, teaching us about what white supremacy systemization was. That's her role. She ain't going to have to protest. That's what her thing, everybody got their role in this. And I think ultimately, even with some of these conversations about, other people outside of people who are directly of African descent, the liberation I'm talking about makes the world better for everybody. This whole neo-colonial oppressive system that we're all living in is just wicked. So when we start talking about liberation and changing that dynamic, I think it ends up changing for so many more people. So again, I know black folks, so that's where I'm going to focus. But when I, talk about being fair and reasonable and not having lies and images and making sure kids don't be fighting, that's better for everybody. And then, I think it's not just about, being righteous for the sake of righteousness. Changing, before we killed Hugo Chavez, he gave a book to Barack Obama, President Obama, called Open Veins of Latin America. And in that book, it talked about how colonialism, the European underdeveloped South America and the world. And in the book, it talked about how the most useful, strongest part of a horse's body is its back. Now, I've been in rooms where I would let that question, somebody said tail one time, some people said leg, maybe it's the leg, but it's the back, because if you put too much in the back, breaks is over. Broken leg, you fix and keep going. But broken backs are bad. Well, when you relegate human beings to beasts of burden, you just eliminate their most powerful and most useful part of their body, and that's their brains. So when we start talking about the system that we're in, it's not just saying the system is wicked, but it prevents us from having the best solutions. 4 old white guys somewhere making all the decisions is just not the best way to have a world run. We want everybody to be able to leverage their talents as best as they can. And that's why I say I'm willing to go in the open marketplace and compete against anybody or with anyone. and I'm willing to collaborate too. But I'm not having a victim conversation. I know this world is not going to be sustainable if we look at how toxic it's become, how much pollution is in the world now, how much genocide is in the world now, how many animals have been eradicated now. I mean, if this system was that productive, maybe people wouldn't argue with it. But you got global warming. This thing has produced a very toxic situation. We need a better solution in this.
So I have one last question for you. Before I do, let's check the time.
It's 10:13.
10:13.
Yeah, okay, so we're okay. All right, yeah, we're late. All right. So I guess wrapping up this conversation, we have like 2 questions in the audience? So we got time for 2 questions. A brother and a sister. Brother? Man.
We got plenty of questions.
Who's that way in the back?
Step outside.
Oh, okay, that's brother Jabari. All right, I'm gonna let Jabari go. Mandela and then Eolas.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Jabari.
It's not really a question, but to go online to segue into what you're saying, there's an emerging technology that's going to change the internet that's being created by the creator of the internet or the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. He has this new project called SOLID, S-O-L-I-D, which stands for socially linked data. What he's doing is trying to take back the internet from corporations who control data, and they're creating these things called pods, P-O-D-S. So everybody has a pod where you have all your data that you can control, and you can select and allow whoever wants to use it under your control. And so this is another piece of the technology decentralization process that we really need to get on, because linking control of your data with transactional capability so you can control who gets what and how much and so forth, and nobody has to know anything about whatever except you and the person who you engage in transaction with. So you got security on top of anonymity. And we really need to start dealing with these things, because when you talk about Lyft and Uber in the Montgomery bus boycott back in 1955, if they had just had the vision, whoa, we don't have to ride on white man's bus. We could just keep doing what we were doing with the carpools and
Go
all
ahead.
that stuff.
Go ahead.
You know, see, but we didn't have the vision
Go ahead.
that we thought we needed the white man's bus to get across the street. Until we were walking and catching rides with each other, but we never thought that we could institutionalize that process, okay, for our own benefit. So the reason I bring it up is that that people like Tim Berners-Lee and all these people, they see these problems, but we never use the technology until the white person says that you can use it. And so I'm just saying that now, one of the things that we have to do in this process is, oppression is a technology issue, okay? Because they only oppress you because they think they need you because they don't have the robots yet, okay? Then when they got the robots, they don't need the oppression, they just kill you, okay? So what we have to do is, like, we got to be 10 decades ahead in our vision. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Hey, let's give him a hand for that, y'all. Thank you.
All right. I know earlier, we spoke about, cash money. We spoke about gold and how these things are pretty much valuable because we say they are. And, now we have the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And, we have value in these things because of the value that we put into them. And with that being said, I just wanted to know, like, if you were aware of, or if there exists any current altcoins, that have been produced to specifically help African nations that could be traded on the Bitcoin market.
I participate in a group called Wacoinda with a brother Lamar Wilson, and there's a sister who's working on a thing called Guapcoin, and there's other brothers and sisters that are working on tokens. I will say this: I wrote an article in CoinDesk, I think it was, called the United States of Africa, and I was talking about a unified currency, harking back to, the Casablanca group. The forerunner to the AU, there was a Casablanca group and a Moravian group. One that wanted to kind of unify and change the borders, ones that wanted to keep the borders the same and not have a national government or international government. Of course, the ones that the Europeans were controlling actually won out and created the AU the way it is. I don't think now, though, that we have to have one of anything. I think we have multiple currencies, tokens, based on the utility of them. If we're a bunch of brothers and sisters that fish a lot, we might have a token that we use to exchange value with our fish. Or if we're farmers, we might have our own token or tomato farming. I think what happens with this technology, what's kind of difficult for us, it's almost like when they came out with the first horseless carriages, the first cars. They call them horseless carriages, right? The actual steering wheel didn't come out until like several years. They had reins. They had like these reins because people actually thought they were making a horseless carriage. So they still were trying to operate this joker with the same thing the horse had. I think it wasn't until later they said, well, we need a round thing that we just turn because this is a whole new thing. I think when we start talking about these cryptocurrencies, we got to stop thinking like, this colonial control thing where it's one token and I'm the black token. There could be a bunch of black. And so if you even look at us as a people, there's still so many African languages. If we were about like being the only one, there'd be maybe 3 or 4. Like the Europeans were very problematic. If they dominated you, they made you speak a language. It's like 4 or 5, and made everybody speak. For thousands and thousands of years in the Americas as well as in the African continent, people had all kinds of languages, and they still coexisted. I'm not saying it was all kumbaya, but folks you didn't have to have the same of anything to be of value to you. We can all be different, and I can welcome your difference. So I don't think it's a cryptocurrency for black people that will be the one thing. I think there's multiple ones that I just mentioned, some of the folks working in the space. I think the difficult thing with all of them is you first have to get the ecosystem. One of the challenges we face is getting people to understand and be willing to be incentivized to work in a new way. I think the token part is probably the easier part. This community part is harder.
Thank you.
Okay. How you doing? All right, I got a whole bunch of questions. Me personally, I'm not going to ask them all right now because I know what time is limited.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to bring it to a couple of joints.
Couple of, why did you come?
Bitcoin.
There's some other people got questions.
Bitcoin as an environmental hazard. Bitcoin as an environmental hazard, as it comes for mining, and also how it incentivizes people who work with developed and also white supremacist nations for the technology and resources, as well as how white supremacy also has control over the satellites that even does it, and how Tor and all of it, blockchain wise, was developed by the government in the first place. So we're putting a lot of trust into people saying that they cannot break encryption in which they designed the process for.
Look, I could, since this is near the end of the night, I'd be like, well, I really don't understand it. We'll go ahead.
It's
Next
almost
question. Look, somebody can get this man out. I'm taking your press pass. Give me some time to think about it. I think it's
little white girl.
Yeah, what's the little white lady gonna come get that phone? Let me try to unpack a lot of the things you said, and I'm probably gonna forget some.
I love black people too.
No, hey, spread the love, my brother. Spread the love. On a Friday night, these are great questions. Okay, the environmental impact. I think that's an easy one, so I'll leave that one. And then the government is in control of it, and the white supremacists gonna come get us. Man, this is a lot. Okay, I think the white supremacists are gonna come get us regardless.
They got it.
So they got it. So you gonna have to come up with something. And if you come up with something, I think it reminds me when we used to organize in groups. We used to say, you have to come up with something to facilitate the meeting. So when someone would bring up, we're going to use Robert's Rules of Order, and this is in some of the black national, why we got to use Robert's Rules? Who was Roberts? That's a white man. We're going to have him in our meeting? I said, look, now wait a minute, brother. Now you come with your own parliamentary procedure, we'll use yours. Now until you come up with one, we're going to have a proper parliamentary procedure. We're going to use these rules. Now when you get yours, we're going to use Leroy's rules. But we're using Robert's right now. So my point to anyone who would bring up what white supremacy has done globally right now with the light bulbs, you can turn off the lights if you want to and say some European was involved, or we can turn the lights on and do the best we can with these lights on. I'd say at the end of the day, we don't have to, this doesn't have to be the ceiling. We might start here, we shouldn't finish here. So however anyone says we got here, with our ridiculous names, and the only way we can talk about Europeans is using English because we don't know another language. All those things are true. Now, as the starting place, we now need to do something to change those. So that's why when I get into the people saying who started this and that, I say whoever started it, I think it's upon us to utilize or to innovate or change to make it do the things we needed to do. Because I know the status quo is horrible. So that's how. And then the one with the using energy and stuff, it's such a bad. I dislike it in the sense that I'm not gonna say to me it's absurd to think having digital information that's encrypted created instead of paper, coins, and metals being created, and somehow thinking the digital stuff is somehow is more burdensome to the world and its ecology than the people who are digging and transporting and shipping all these paper and molecules. At the end of the day, I'll take bits over molecules as far as being more efficient anytime. So when people say, is the mining power, is that somehow disrupting the world? I say, that is probably a better use of energy than printing these little pennies that we don't even want to keep. And that comes from somewhere. So if you put apples to apples, that system of mining is infinitely more efficient and less consuming of energy than people making paper bills that are printed on this and that, and then the actual cost to ship them and the pollution that's going in the air. When I transact Bitcoin, it's going to the internet. Again, there's some electricity used, and then maybe it's from a coal-fired plant. But the people who made that diesel truck and built that engine and put all, that's a whole bunch going into making that truck move them big paper bills. So if we put apples to apples, there's no comparison to what mining does compared to minting coins. You say mining, you're saying me getting on my computer and somebody literally having to go dig some ore out of the ground, process it, and then mint it. You need manufacturing facilities for that.
But we know that there is actual enslavement and child labor with the laptops and digging those coltan out so that those coins can
Forget.
I'm
saying apples to apples. I said apples to apples. I didn't say none of it was made by God. I'm just saying if you compare what we're using now, Bitcoin is infinitely better than what we're doing now, because it's coltan and computers going into the processing of all the things that make paper money and coins, in addition to all the smelting, all the real and heavy industrial horrible chemicals that they're doing to make that, to somehow say the guy on the computer or the system on the computer is polluting the world more. Man, that's a tough one. I think it's tough.
All right, guys, forgive us. We got to cut it short here tonight just because of the fact we're over time.
That's right.
And everybody's got places to go. My brother.
Friday night.
Yeah. Let's give Mr. Sinclair Skinner another hand, y'all. I saw a couple more hands in the audience. If people have any more questions, how can they reach out to you? Or like, do you have time to sit and like talk with them for a little bit before you go off, or tonight? Or I'm not.
Well, a couple things. Maybe I should have done a little pitch thing. So we're right now in the process of developing the beta of this I Love Black People coupon, and we're also in the process of expanding to multiple countries. So we definitely are looking for brand ambassadors and people who can help us in evangelizing and spreading the word of what we're doing. You can reach us at info@bitmari, bitmari.com, or info@ILoveBlackPeople. That might be super easy. ILoveBlackPeople, one word.com, info. You can reach in and ask us any questions that you need. We have a website. We have a virtual office downtown, operations here uptown, and we have headquarters in Harare, Zimbabwe. You always can stop by us if you're ever in Zimbabwe, check us out. We're right now in the process of raising another round of funding. We did a pre-seed round, and we raised $342,000 for our minimum viable product in Zimbabwe. We're now expanding, so we're in the process of raising $2 million to expand to about 20 more countries. What else is going on? I'm probably not doing this as well as I should, but any questions anyone has, please, I'm more than happy to answer them while I'm here. And then thank you guys for spending a Friday night talking about encrypted data. Whew, God bless y'all.
Let's give him another hand, fam. Let's give him another hand, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. Thank you. At this time, there's a sign-in sheet going around. I want to give a special shout-out to Brother Matthew here. He stepped out on Friday night as well to help with the All Eyes on DC show. We got to give him a hand, y'all. So he's passing around a sign-in sheet. You sign in with your email. You can stay abreast of what's going on. I send out a lot of emails from time to time just to let people know what's going on. So please stay connected. This is the part of the show where we got to pay the bills in a sense. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Matthew the collection plate in a sense. Oh man, thank you.
It's not Bitcoin. I put some fiat. Y'all might be mad.
No problem. Thank you. No problem. So, whatever little you got, coins, dollars, whatever the case is, you can just, give it. We got to make a new sign. We just got a new phone, to broadcast to Facebook and whoever else. We got to keep the technology up. Keep in mind that none of this goes to me in my pockets. It all gets recycled back into All Eyes on DC. The little sister here earlier, she asked me, whose show was this? And I told her, this is everybody's show. It's not relegated to just one person. This is more of a community entity, so we want to keep it going. This is sort of like crowdfunding in a sense. Every show, we ask for a little bit that you got, and it gets recycled back into the show. So whatever little you got, and if you haven't already, please sign the sign-in sheet with your email address and stuff like that. Next show, the third Friday in December. Tentatively, we got a sister coming through, an elder. She's going to talk about quilting. Quilting has been very big, among our people, especially here on this side. I know when I was coming up, when I learned the racist history, I also learned about how quilting was very, as far as storytelling and just, stitching our stories into fabric was very pivotal. So we're going to learn more about that the third weekend in December, the third Friday. So I encourage y'all to come out. As always, it's a pleasure having y'all here in Sankofa. I'm very blessed to be here with y'all. And let's keep on going, y'all, until we're free, y'all. Give yourselves a hand for being here tonight, please, y'all. It's a pleasure, y'all. Thank y'all.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Hey.